You ever look into a mirror and wonder if something's staring back, not copying you, not even seeing you, just waiting for you to blink? I moved into my first apartment when I was 23. It wasn't much, just a cramped studio on the third floor of a creaky old building a few blocks off downtown. The hallway smelled like mildew and pipe smoke. The radiators groaned like dying animals every time they kicked on. But the rent was cheap, and the landlord didn't ask too many questions. So, it felt like a win. The apartment had this weird charm to it. Old hardwood floors, tall windows with heavy drapes, and one of those ancient fireplaces that had been sealed off decades ago. Above it was this big, rectangular mirror nailed directly into the exposed brick. The landlord told me it was original to the building, which apparently meant it came with the place, whether I wanted it or not. I didn't mind it at first. It had this antique frame, dark, almost black wood, carved with ivy and floral patterns that twisted like veins. The glass itself was odd, though not quite dirty, but off. It had a yellowish hue, like the kind of tint you see on old film photos. And no matter how much I wiped it down, the corners always stayed slightly foggy, like someone had just breathed on it. Still, I thought it added character. That was before I started noticing the little things. At first, it was harmless things I could chalk up to poor lighting, or just being tired. I'd walk past the mirror and catch a glimpse of movement that didn't make sense. A flicker, maybe, a shape in the background. I'd turn my head and everything would look normal. But my stomach would stay knotted for minutes afterward. There was one night in particular. I remember maybe 3 weeks after I moved in. I'd just gotten home from a night shift. It was close to 2 a.m. and I was exhausted. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and went to the tiny kitchenette to grab a glass of water. The mirror faced that side of the apartment. I wasn't even thinking about it, just going through the motions. Then I saw it in the corner of the mirror, not center frame. Not something obvious, but just barely within the left edge of the reflection. There was something standing next to the kitchenette behind me. But when I turned, the space was empty. No one was there. I froze for a second, holding my breath. My apartment isn't big. There was nowhere for someone to hide. I checked the closet, even under the bed. Nothing. I told myself I was just tired, that my eyes were playing tricks on me. Maybe there'd been a shadow from outside, or a weird refraction. It was late. I was overtired. I went to bed and told myself to forget it. But I see OULD and single quotes. Over the next week, things escalated. I'd walk past the mirror and feel like something was off, like the reflection lagged half a second behind, or worse, like it was too fast. I caught my own head turning slightly before I moved. Once, my reflection blinked while I was staring wide. I dot. Another time, I stood in front of the mirror for a full minute, unmoving, watching, testing. Everything looked fine. Then I turned away and caught the faintest flicker out of the corner of my eye. Like my reflection hesitated to turn with me. Like it wanted to stay and watch a moment longer. I stopped using the fireplace area altogether. I started dressing in the bathroom instead. My TV sat right beneath the mirror, and I couldn't watch anything without catching that yellowish glare above it, silently watching back. I started keeping the lights dim in the living room, hoping the mirror would just blend into the shadows. But it never did. It always reflected just enough light to remain visible, a faint, breathing rectangle of darkness in the center of my apartment. Then came the dreams. It started as flashes, distorted versions of my own apartment. But in the dreams, the mirror was larger. It stretched from floor to ceiling, a gaping pane of shadowed glass. The entire room was reflected in perfect clarity, but something was different. The furniture was reversed, yes, but that wasn't it. There were details that didn't belong, photographs on the walls I didn't own, patterns in the wallpaper that weren't there when I was awake. And sometimes I'd see someone standing in the reflection. Not me, not quite. It looked like me at first glance, but the posture was wrong. The expression wasn't mine. It stood too still, its mouth too flat, and it never blinked. One night, I woke up, gasping, sweat soaking through my sheets. I could swear I'd seen my reflection smile at me in the dream, a slow, stretching grin that didn't reach its eyes. It had held up its hand, like it was pressing against the other side of the glass, trying to get out. I avoided the mirror entirely after that. By the second month, I was sleeping on the floor in the kitchen, using a sleeping bag and headphones to drown out the creaks and groans of the apartment. I kept the mirror covered with a thick bedsheet, duct-taped along the top. I'd drape another towel over it for good measure, and still, I'd catch it trying to peek through the edges of the sheet would lift ever so slightly when the window was closed and no breeze was possible. Sometimes I'd hear soft tapping sounds, like fingernails on glass, even when I was in the other room. One time, I came home from work and found the entire sheet pulled halfway down, hanging like someone had clawed at it from the inside. I didn't even check the reflection. I just turned around, walked back out, and spent the night in my car, I called the landlord the next day and told him I wanted the mirror removed. I tried to be polite about it, but I was desperate. He acted like I was being ridiculous. That thing's been up there longer than I've been alive, he said over the phone. You're not the first tenant to complain, but it's part of the unit. You don't like it, don't look at it. I offered to pay for the removal myself, but he refused. I didn't know what else to do. So I went to a thrift store and bought a heavy curtain, blackout fabric, thick as hell. I mounted a cheap tension rod across the top of the brick and draped it across the mirror, pressing it flat so not even a sliver showed. For a couple of days, things felt better. I could sleep in my bed again. I stopped dreaming about that reflection. I let myself believe the worst had passed. Then I heard it. It was around 3 a.m. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, half asleep. The room was quiet, except for the radiator popping. Then came the sound, faint at first, like a soft, dragging noise. A slow, repeated scrape. Scrape, scrape. I sat up. It was coming from the fireplace. From behind the curtain, I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and tiptoed over. My heart was pounding, every instinct screaming not to go near it. But I needed to see. The curtain was pulsing, just slightly, like someone was pressing against it from the other side. Then the sound changed. It was no longer scraping, it was whispering, not words, not clearly, just a soft, breathy sound, like a voice trying to form through glass. I backed away slowly, flashlight trembling in my hand. I went into the kitchen and spent the rest of the night huddled on the floor again, rocking like a scared kid. I didn't sleep. The next day, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The curtain, which I had carefully taped to the wall, was ripped in one spot. A small tear in the fabric, right at eye level, and behind it. I could see the mirror, just a sliver, enough to catch a glimpse of myself. Only. It wasn't me. My reflection stood in place, head tilted slightly, smiling, that same damn smile. From the dreams, I screamed and ripped the curtain down, and for a moment, it stood still while I stumbled backward, and only when I looked directly into its eyes did it suddenly snap into motion, like it had been waiting for me to see it. I packed my things that night. I didn't care about the lease. I didn't care about losing my deposit. I didn't even care that half my stuff was still inside. I left the apartment at 4:12 a.m. and never went back. I stayed with a friend for a while, found a new place eventually, one without mirrors. For a while, I thought I was okay, but then it started again. I saw it first in a storefront window, a brief flicker of motion that didn't match mine. Then in a rearview mirror, just a hint, a suggestion of something in the back seat. Now, every time I pass by glass, I feel like I'm being watched. Like my reflection is following me. Not out of mimicry, but out of memory. Like it remembers me, and it's waiting for another crack. They say a mirror can capture a soul. But no one ever tells you what happens if the reflection decides it doesn't want to let go. Asterisk, there's something deeply wrong with the mirrors in that store. I'm not talking about bad lighting or warped glass. I mean wrong, like they show things that shouldn't be there. Including me. I worked retail for 3 years. Outlet, a discount clothing store in the corner unit of an old strip mall. Across from a half-abandoned bowling alley and a pizza place that somehow always smelled like burnt rubber. The store itself was grim, flickering overhead lights. Thin industrial carpeting, loud fluorescent buzz everywhere you went. But the worst part wasn't the customers, wasn't the manager, wasn't even the night shifts. It was the fitting rooms. We had 6 of them in the back corner of the store. Each a narrow little stall with chipped particle board walls and heavy curtains instead of doors. At the far end of every room was a full-length mirror bolted into the drywall. They were clean, polished almost obsessively by our janitor, but something about them always seemed too clean, too reflective, like they didn't just show you, they saw you. I never liked going in there. Even when I had to check for tags or refold returned items, I'd avoid looking directly into the mirrors because sometimes they didn't show what they were supposed to, and sometimes they showed things I didn't want to see. I remember the first time I really noticed it. A woman had come to the counter with a pair of jeans and a blazer. She seemed flustered, not upset, exactly, more like she wanted to leave as fast as possible. She mumbled something about the lighting making her dizzy, paid in cash, and left so fast she forgot the bag. I went to check the stall she'd used, fitting room 3, just to see if she'd left anything behind. The curtain was half open. Inside was clean. Just the folded hanger and the crumpled paper tag. But the mirror, ... there were smudges all over the glass. Not fingerprints, exactly. They looked more like handprints pressed flat, long and stretched, with smears trailing down the surface. Like someone had touched the mirror, then tried to slide down it. Weirdest part, they were on the inside of the glass. I tried wiping them, but they wouldn't come off. The surface felt perfectly clean. No residue, but the handprints were visible, faint, but there I remember standing there, frowning, just staring at the reflection, at my own face. Something was off. My expression didn't look quite right, like I was confused. Yes, but the reflection seemed almost amused. I backed away, shaking it off. Figured it was just a trick of the light. A bad angle. Maybe I'd been staring too long. But after that, I started noticing other things. Customers would come out of the changing rooms looking pale, uneasy. Some would ask if the lights were motion censored. They said they kept flickering inside. Others said they heard buzzing, not from the ceiling fixtures, but from the mirror. One woman asked me if the stalls were double-sided. I felt like I was being watched the whole time, she said, laughing nervously at first. I assumed it was just retail paranoia. Everyone feels a little vulnerable when they're half undressed under fluorescent lights. But it wasn't just customers, it was me, too. One slow night in October, I was working a closing shift. It was just me and Ryan, the stock kid, and we were doing inventory between waves of folding old clearance sweaters. He was in the back room, blasting music on his phone. I took a break and went to tidy up the fitting rooms. The air back there felt off, heavy, the kind of stillness that makes your skin prick. As I stepped into fitting room 5, I paused in front of the mirror. I wasn't even sure why. Something had caught my eye. Just a flicker of movement. I stared for a moment, and that's when I noticed it. My reflection was breathing. But I wasn't. I stood perfectly still, holding my breath. The version of me in the mirror took another slow inhale, its chest rising, then falling. My lungs were empty, and yet I was. Watching myself breathe, I stumbled back, heart pounding, and the mirror snapped back to normal. Now the reflection matched me again, pale, wide-eyed, lips parted. I didn't tell Ryan. I didn't tell anyone. I just left the fitting room and kept folding. It didn't stop. Over the next couple of weeks, I started dreading closing shifts. I'd do anything to avoid going back to the fitting area alone, especially when someone would leave clothes behind or a kid would wander into the stalls. One night, I heard crying coming from fitting room 6. Was near closing. Lights were already half dimmed. I thought a customer had maybe gotten locked in or was having a breakdown. I rushed over, calling out, "Hey, are you okay in there?" No answer, just soft sobbing, like a child. I pulled the curtain aside gently. The stall was empty, but the crying continued. It was coming from the mirror. It didn't echo, didn't bounce around the walls like normal sound. It was flat, hollow, like it was trapped behind the glass. I stared at my reflection, and for a second, I thought I saw something behind me, a small shape, sitting on the floor. When I turned, there was nothing there, but in the mirror, I could still see it, just faintly. A childlike shape, knees drawn up, face buried in hands. I stepped out and closed the curtain. The crying stopped. I finally brought it up to my manager, Lisa, told her that something felt wrong with the mirrors. I didn't go into detail, just said they creeped people out, and maybe we should cover them or something. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "We've had those mirrors for 10 years, she said. "Corporate picked them. We're not touching them." I dropped it, but I started keeping track. Over the next month, I recorded every customer who looked uncomfortable. Every time someone came out and asked about the lighting. Every smudge I found that didn't match handprints. Every flicker, every cold draft, every voice I couldn't explain. By the end of the month, I had 12 entries, 6 different mirrors, and then it got worse. One night, I stayed late to help Lisa close. She left early, and I volunteered too. Lockup, I was alone. Store light dimmed. Security gate half pulled. I went to the fitting rooms one last time to check for stragglers. Every curtain was open except one. Room 4. I called out. Stores closed. No response. I stepped inside. Empty, but in the mirror, something moved. Not me. Something behind me. I turned. Nothing. Then I looked back. And my reflection was smiling. I wasn't. It tilted its head slowly. Deliberately, I backed away, heart racing. Then, as I reached the doorway, it raised its hand, pressed its palm against the glass. Fingers spread. I stared, and slowly, the hand began to tap. Once, twice, 3 times. I turned and ran. I didn't lock up. I didn't lock out. I just left. That was the last time I stepped into that part. I gave my 2 weeks. The next day, told them I'd found another job. I didn't. I just couldn't keep going back there. On my last day, I walked past the fitting rooms one final time. Every mirror was covered with new signage. A promo poster for fall sales, taped directly across the glass. I asked Lisa about it. "Oh," she said casually, weird timing. Corporate said something about optics and customer feedback. Wanted them covered for a while. She didn't look me in the eyes when she said it. I don't shop in stores anymore. I can't. Dressing rooms make my skin crawl. Sometimes I still hear that soft tapping in my dreams. Once I looked into my bedroom mirror too long and saw my reflection smile before I did. It raised its hand, pressed it against the glass, and started to tap. You ever wonder how many mirrors you've walked past without really looking. How many times your reflection might have lingered, even after you moved on. Some mirrors don't just reflect what's in front of them. They remember what stood there. And sometimes they don't forget you. I inherited my grandmother's mirror the year after she passed away. It arrived in a box taller than I was, padded with old newspaper and wrapped in a dusty wool blanket that smelled like her attic. The handwriting on the label was my mother's. For Emily, from Nana's bedroom. Be careful with this one. That should have been my first warning. I hadn't asked for anything from the estate. I loved my grandmother. She practically raised me, but I didn't want any of her things. Her house always felt off, not haunted, exactly, just heavy, like the past clung to the walls. Even as a kid, I avoided certain rooms, especially the master bedroom. It wasn't scary, just felt like you were being watched. The mirror had hung above her old dresser for as long as I could remember. Oval-shaped, framed in tarnished bronze with claw-like accents curling at the top and bottom. The surface was warped slightly, like the glass had been pulled forward in the middle. Even as a child, I thought it looked more like a staring eye than a mirror. Still, when the box arrived, I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. It felt wrong, disrespectful, maybe. So I set it up in the hallway outside my bedroom. That's when things started happening. At first, it was subtle. I'd catch strange reflections out of the corner of my eye, movement that didn't match what I was doing, a flicker when I walked past, a shadow that vanished when I looked directly. Sometimes I'd pass by and get the distinct sense that someone had just been looking into it, like walking in on a conversation you weren't supposed to hear. Then, one night, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. I was brushing my teeth. The bathroom door was cracked open, and from the mirror above the sink, I could see the hallway and the old mirror reflected behind me. Only, it wasn't just the hallway I saw. There was someone standing in front of my grandmother's mirror, a woman. She stood completely still, thin, pale. Her face was shadowed, but I could see she wore a long nightgown, the same kind my grandmother used to wear when I was little, the same one she was buried in. I spun around, heart pounding. The hallway was empty, but when I looked back into the bathroom mirror, the figure was gone. I didn't sleep that night. Over the next few days, it got worse. I started hearing sounds. In the hallway, light footsteps, soft breathing. Once, I heard my name whispered, just barely audible, as I was falling asleep. Then, I noticed something else. My reflection in the old mirror started acting strange. It began with a delay. I'd walk past and the reflection would lag half a beat behind. At first, I thought I was imagining it, some trick of the warped glass. But then I tested it. It was always a second late, like it had to remember what to do. Then came the smile. I was standing in front of the mirror one night, staring at it, trying to figure out what was wrong. My reflection leaned to. Everything seemed normal then. It smiled. Didn't. I was still staring, lips parted in confusion. But in the glass, my reflection was smiling. Wide, too wide. Like it was pleased. Then, before I could react, it snapped back to mimicry. My expression now mirrored perfectly again. I stepped back slowly, my hands cold, scalp tingling with electricity. Whatever that thing in the glass was. Me. I tried moving the mirror into the garage. It didn't help. Even after it was gone from the hallway, I kept seeing glimpses of it in other reflective surfaces, in windows, in doorknobs. Once, in the glossy screen of my turned-off TV, the shape of a thin woman, smiling. Worse still, my dreams became nightmares. I was always in my grandmother's bedroom, always standing in front of that mirror, only in the dreams. The room was wrong. The furniture was decayed. Mold bloomed across the walls. The mirror was darker, almost black, and yet it still reflected clearly. Every night, I'd dream of standing there while something on the other side slowly approached. I could never see it clearly. It never reached me. Got closer. One morning, I woke up with scratches on my chest. 3 parallel lines. Shallow but visible, like fingernails had raked across my skin. I live alone. I don't have pets. My nails were trimmed short. There was no explanation. I opened the garage, grabbed the mirror, and drove it to the local dump. They wouldn't take it. Said something about hazardous glass, that the metal was old, maybe lead-based. They wouldn't let me leave it. I drove it back home and left it on the curb the next morning. It was back in the hallway, not leaning against the door, not inside the house, mounted, bolted back into the wall, just like it had always been. I don't remember letting it back in. I don't remember mounting it, but there it was. I started documenting everything, timestamps, photos, even recordings of me walking past it. Sometimes, when I reviewed the footage, I'd see things I didn't notice in the moment. A reflection moving a little, too. Early my face staring out long after I'd passed by in one video. I saw myself stand completely still, facing the mirror. Even though I never stopped, the version of me in the footage never blinked, never moved, just stared. For 4 whole minutes, I brought in a priest. I'm not even religious, but I was. Desperate, he walked into the hallway, took one look at the mirror, and quietly said, "This shouldn't be here." He tried praying over it, sprinkled holy water. Nothing happened. But later that night, I found his crucifix on the floor in front of the mirror, bent backwards. I called him the next day. He didn't answer. The church said he'd taken a leave of absence. I've stopped trying to get rid of it. The mirror wants to be here. That much I've accepted now. I just void it. I've taped paper over the surface, covered it with blankets. Nothing works. Even when I can't see it, I feel it, watching. Sometimes I catch myself standing in front of it, with no memory of getting up. Sometimes I see myself smiling in it, that same horrible, knowing smile. And I have to fight the urge to move my mouth to match it. Once I blinked, and my reflection didn't. I've started locking the hallway at night. I sleep with the lights on, mirrors covered, TV unplugged, phone face down. None of it helps, because now the dreams have stopped. But I still see the mirror when I close my eyes. And in the reflection, someone is always closer than before, smiling, waiting. My grandmother used to say her mirror was the last thing she'd ever leave behind. I don't think she meant it metaphorically. The mirror in room 34 doesn't reflect what's there. It shows you something else, something you're not supposed to see. And if you stare too long, it shows you to something else, too. I travel for work a lot, mostly regional training, seminars and franchise inspections for a mid-sized retail chain. It's boring, lonely, and the kind of job that makes you numb to hotels. After a while, they all feel the same: bland, beige walls, polyester curtains, mystery stains, and that faint chemically bleached smell trying to cover up decades of use. But there's one hotel I'll never forget. It was a small place outside of Madera, California, about 3 hours from my last stop. Not one of our regular chains. Just a roadside spot I booked through an app. The reviews were okay. Not glowing, but not bad either. I didn't think much about it until I got to the front desk and the older woman working there looked at my reservation, hesitated, then handed me the key to room 304 with a strange pause. "You'll be up on the 3rd floor," she said slowly. "Elevators down. Stairs are to your left." I thanked her and headed up. But as I turned away, I heard her add under her breath, "Don't leave the bathroom light off at night." Stopped. What? She gave me a tight smile and said nothing else. Room 304 was dated, peeling wallpaper, loud, a C unit that wheezed when it started, a flickering yellow lamp on the nightstand. The bedspread looked clean enough, but I didn't trust it. I tossed my overnight bag on the floor and flipped on every light. The room had a strange layout. Bed in the center, desk in the corner, and the bathroom off to the left. But what stood out was the mirror. It hung above the dresser, directly across from the bed. Tall, narrow, with a cheap brass frame. There was something strange about its placement, too low. The top was barely shoulder height. It gave the impression that you weren't looking into it. You were looking down into it, like peering into a dark well. And the glass was wrong, dull, too dark. Like the silver beneath it was tarnished. My reflection looked shadowed, even. With the lights on, my skin tone washed out. My eyes darker than they should be. But I was exhausted. I shrugged it off and told myself to stop being weird. I took a shower, left the bathroom light on out of some vague unease, and collapsed into bed. I woke up around 3:17 a.m. with an awful pressure behind my eyes, like I'd been crying in my sleep. The room was dark, but the soft glow from the bathroom cast just enough light to show me the silhouette of the dresser and the mirror. Something was wrong. I could see myself in it, but I wasn't moving. I blinked, shifted under the covers, lifted one hand, but in the mirror, my reflection stayed perfectly still. Then, without warning, it turned its head just slightly, slowly, tilting toward me like it had just noticed I was watching. I gasped, sat bolt upright, and the moment I moved, the reflection snapped back to normal, mirroring me perfectly again. But I know what I saw. And that night was only the beginning. The next morning, I felt groggy, eyes heavy, skin cold, like I'd been awake all night, even though I had no memory of waking up after that moment. I tried to convince myself it was just a dream, maybe a mix of bad sleep and the weird vibe of the room. I went down to the front desk and asked if I could switch rooms. The same woman from before looked up at me. Her expression didn't change. "I can try to move you," she said softly, "but 304 has already claimed your reservation." I frowned. "What does that mean?" She hesitated. Then, voice low, said, "Just keep the bathroom light on. And if you see yourself moving when you're not, don't react." That night, I came back from a meeting late. I stood in the hallway outside room 304 for a full minute, keycard in hand, staring at the door like it might open on its own. Inside, the air was thick, warm, stale. I left the bathroom light on again and double-checked every inch of the room. Under the bed, behind the curtains, inside the closet. Nothing. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the mirror. My reflection stared back. Except the lighting was off, too dim. Even with every bulb on, my reflection was draped in shadow, like the room in the glass wasn't the one I was in. I waved my hand. The mirror copied me. I stood up. It followed, but as I turned to leave, I saw second figure in the reflection, standing in the bathroom doorway. Not me, not a trick of the light, just a figure, tall, pale, with no discernible features. Watching, I spun around, but the bathroom was empty. When I turned back, the figure in the mirror was gone. I sat on the bed, trembling, every hair on my body raised. I left the lights on, climbed under the covers, and stayed perfectly still. I didn't sleep, but at some point, I must have passed out. The next morning, something was off. The mirror was closer to the bed. I don't mean visually. I mean physically. It had somehow been unscrewed from the wall and now leaned against the foot of the bed, propped up perfectly, angled toward the pillow. I didn't hear anything, didn't feel anyone in the room. But there it was. I tried to call the front desk. No dial tone, no signal. I grabbed my bag and went to leave. But the door wouldn't unlock. I tried the deadbolt, the handle, nothing. Then I saw it in the reflection, me standing at the door, just like I was, but smiling, that same wrong smile I'd seen in the hallway mirror back home. Then the reflection raised one hand and waved. I lost time after that. I don't remember how long I sat there. Hours, maybe. Eventually, the lights dimmed on their own. The bathroom light flickered. I heard movement behind me, and when I turned, the bed was empty. But in the mirror, someone was lying there. Not me, just shape. Sleeping, breathing. I turned back. Nothing on the bed, but in the mirror. The figure opened its eyes, and it was me, but not. The next time I blinked, it was morning. The mirror was back on the wall. My suitcase was packed. The door was unlocked. I checked out without a word. The woman at the front desk didn't look up. I didn't ask. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove 3 hours in silence. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've seen myself in places I haven't been, reflections in windows as I drive past, a face in a phone screen before I turn it on, my reflection already looking at me before I raise my eyes. Sometimes, in the mirror, I catch a glimpse of a room I don't recognize. Beige walls, a low brass mirror, and a flickering bathroom light behind me. And now, every night when I sleep, I dream of room 304. But I'm not the guest anymore. I'm the one. In the mirror, waiting for someone else to look too long. Hotels are designed for people to pass through. But what if the room doesn't want you to leave? We were 12 when we first heard the story. If you stand in front of the mirror in the girls' locker room after school, turn off the lights and say her name 3 times. She looks back at you, and if you blink, she takes your place. Middle school was the worst time in my life. Everyone says that, but for me, it's not because of the braces or the drama or the awkward pay classes. It's because I think I left someone behind there, or maybe something else came back with me. Let me explain. I went to a small public school in a sleepy little town in northern Indiana. Not a lot happened. We were the kind of town that still had harvest festivals and a single Dairy Queen that everyone piled into after football games. The school was old, creaky floors, dusty hallways, and a sour mildew smell in the basement that never went away. But the girls' locker room, that place felt wrong. Even before we knew the story, it was buried below the old gym. Narrow, low-ceilinged, with buzzing fluorescent lights and chipped tiles. It always felt cold, even in spring. The mirrors were the worst part. Long smeared rectangles mounted above rust-stained sinks. The glass was warped, like something pressing just under the surface. The other girls never lingered near them. We'd avoid our reflections when changing, glancing away quickly, almost instinctively, like we didn't want to see something we weren't supposed to. Then one day, in 7th grade, someone told the story. Her name was Callie, or Callie, or maybe it was spelled with a Q. Every version was different, and that made it worse. Like the story didn't want to be consistent. According to the legend, Callie was a student who went to our school in the 90s. She was quiet, weird, didn't talk much. They said she used to sit alone in the locker room after school and talk to the mirrors. Said she could hear someone talking back. One day, she stayed behind after everyone left. She turned off the lights, faced the center mirror, and whispered her own name 3 times. What came out of the mirror wasn't her anymore. No one ever saw her again. The teachers said she ran away, but if you tried the ritual and you saw her face instead of yours and you blinked, you'd switch places. She'd come out, and you'd be trapped forever on the other side of the glass. It was just a dumb rumor until it wasn't. It started with a dare. It always does, doesn't it? This girl named Melissa, the kind who wore glittery eyeshadow and had older siblings, who smoked behind the gym, said she was going to do it after school, alone. I don't know why I went with her. I didn't even like her that much, but something about the way she said it all casual and offhand, like it was nothing. It bothered me, like she didn't take it seriously, like she was poking something old and angry just for fun. We stayed late after volleyball practice, waited until everyone left. The lights in the gym shut off one by one with these heavy, metallic thunks, and the locker room went silent. Melissa led the way. I remember how the fluorescent lights flickered above us, stood in front of the center mirror. The others lined the walls, but the center one that was hers. She smirked, "Watch this," and then she turned off the lights. Pitch black. I remember the sound of our breathing, my own heart pounding in my ears. Then, in the dark, Callie, 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 Callie. Nothing. Then, a soft creak. Not from the room. From inside the mirror. A cold draft swept past us. The mirror glass made a sound like a foot dragging against linoleum. Melissa screamed and flicked the light on. We were alone, but her reflection wasn't right at first. I couldn't pinpoint it. She was there, standing in front of the mirror. Same clothes, same face, but her expression was wrong. Too still, too perfect. Like it had been frozen in place. And as Melissa stepped back from the glass, her reflection didn't move. Not until a full second later, like it had to catch up. She laughed nervously. Guess nothing happened. I didn't say anything, but I couldn't stop staring at the mirror, and it was staring back after that. Things changed. Melissa stopped coming to school. At first, they said she was sick. Then her parents pulled her out completely. Rumors flew. Drugs, rehab, family trouble. But I knew better, because a week after that night, I went into the locker room alone and saw her in the mirror. It was just for a second. I swear. I turned toward the sink, and out of the corner of my eye, there she was. But it wasn't my reflection. It was her, Melissa, in the same hoodie she wore the night of the ritual. Same cut above her lip from volleyball practice. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She just stared and smiled. Not at me, through me. I didn't go near that mirror again. I avoided the locker room as much as I could. I'd catch glimpses in the window glass, the glare on my phone screen, the chrome surface of a drinking fountain. Not my reflection. Hers. She followed me everywhere, silent, grinning, waiting. And one night, while brushing my teeth before bed, I dropped my toothbrush, and when I bent to pick it up and look back, up, she was there, right behind me, but only in the mirror, and this time, she moved first. I screamed. My parents came running. The mirror showed only me again. But it was a lie. I knew it. That night, I didn't sleep, and the next morning, something was wrong. I looked in the bathroom mirror and didn't recognize myself. Same eyes, same face, but they looked empty, like someone else was wearing my skin. And when I raised my hand to touch my cheek, my reflection lagged behind a full second, like it had to think about what to do. I stopped using mirrors after that, refused to look into them, covered the one in my room with a towel, refused to take selfies. My friends thought I was having a breakdown, but I was just trying to survive. You see, I think Melissa made a deal. She didn't get taken, not completely. She traded places, and now, every time I look in a mirror, she's a little closer, taking back what she left behind, or worse, leaving someone else in her place. People think mirrors reflect who we are, but sometimes they show who we could become if we let the wrong thing in. So if someone dares you to say her name 3 times, don't, because you won't know you've switched places till it's too late. There's a moment right before dawn when the sky over the city turns a pale gray blue, cold, quiet, suspended. That's when I see her most clearly, in the mirror, looking back at me, living the life I should have had. I moved into the apartment in late October. It was high, 23 stories up, perched just above the skyline. It's the kind of unit you only get after a messy divorce when you're trying too hard to look like you're thriving. The place came half-furnished, neutral tones, sleek lines, a smart thermostat I never figured out how to use. The bathroom was what sold me, floor-to-ceiling slate tiles, a deep, soaking tub, and a mirror that stretched the length of the wall, nearly 7 feet across, wide and perfectly smooth. It made the narrow room feel huge. The first night I stayed there, I couldn't stop staring at it. It started with little things, tiny delays, almost imperceptible. I'd reach for my toothbrush, and for a blink, my reflection wouldn't move. Just stood there, blank-eyed, arm unmoving. I told myself it was fatigue, divorce, stress, not sleeping enough. Then came the fog. Every morning, when I stepped out of the shower, the mirror would be completely fogged up, except for a perfectly clear circle in the center, like someone had been watching from the other side, breathing on the glass. At first, I thought it was a draft or some odd condensation pattern. I'd wipe it away and go about my day. But then, about a week after moving in, I saw her. She looked like me, almost same face, same hair, but there were differences. She wore a wedding ring, a different hairstyle. Her skin looked healthier, her eyes clearer. She stared at me through the fog, still calm, expectant. And when I raised my hand to wipe the mirror. She didn't move. She just kept staring, not like a reflection. A window, a view into a life that wasn't mine anymore. I told myself I was imagining things. Stress, hallucinations, grief, trauma, the ghost of a life I threw away. But each morning she was there, in the mirror, clearer, closer. One morning, I noticed something that stopped me cold. The bathroom in her world, it wasn't the same. The tiles were a shade lighter. The soap dispenser, a different style. The towels folded with military precision. Little differences. Just enough to be wrong. And then there were the sounds. Voices. Faint. Muffled. A baby's laugh. A man humming. A life I never got to live. I started taking pictures, recording videos, but every time I did, it was just me. My reflection, empty. Whatever was happening, it didn't want to be documented, only experienced. One night, after a long bath, I sat on the floor of the bathroom with the lights off, staring at the mirror, and for the first time, she spoke. Her lips moved. Slowly, clearly. I didn't hear the words out loud. They formed directly in my head, like thoughts that didn't belong to me. You could have had all of it. I shook my head. My voice came out cracked. That wasn't my path. She tilted her head, not in judgment, but in curiosity. Like a scientist studying a flawed specimen. Then she lifted her hand, pressed her fingers to the glass, and, for one horrifying second, the mirror rippled like water. I scrambled out of the bathroom, locked the door, didn't sleep, and from that day on, I covered the mirror with a towel. It felt childish, silly, but necessary, until one morning, I found the towel on the floor, and written in the condensation, in a hand that wasn't mine, "Do you want to switch?" I stopped using the bathroom mirror, brushed my teeth in the kitchen, put on makeup in the elevator using the reflective chrome. But it wasn't enough. She found other ways to reach me. The black screen of my phone when it powered down. The glare on my laptop monitor. A puddle on the sidewalk. Always there. Always smiling. And then, one night, I dreamed of her. Except it wasn't a dream. It was her life. I could smell the baby powder, hear the hum of lullabies, taste the fresh coffee. I woke up with tears streaming down my face, heart pounding. But not in fear, in longing. The next morning, the mirror was clear. No fog. No condensation. Just her, standing closer than ever. No more words, just an outstretched hand, waiting, and I almost did it. I almost touched the glass, felt myself leaning forward, heart racing, but at the last second, I saw it. Her smile, it wasn't warm. or kind, or welcoming. It was hungry, triumphant, like she knew I was about to give up. So I pulled back, closed the door, and haven't looked in a mirror since. People ask why I don't use reflections anymore, why I keep my apartment dim, why I seem so withdrawn. It's because I know she's still waiting, and someday, when I'm tired enough, sad enough, I might take her hand. There's a version of you in the mirror, one who made different choices, lived a different life. But don't look too long, because she's looking back, and she might want what you have more than you want what she does. Asterisk, there's no reason a full-length mirror should be standing upright in the middle of the woods. No frame, no path. Just the thick silence of pine needles, and your own reflection staring back, until it starts to move without you. I used to go hiking alone every weekend. After the breakup, the silence of the woods was a comfort, something I could control. The trees didn't talk back. The dirt didn't lie. The wind never judged me. I had a trail I followed religiously, a loop through the northern part of Fox Hollow Preserve, about 9 miles out and back. Never had an issue. No cell service deep into the loop, but I always left a note with my sister before I left. Safety first. It was mid-November when I saw it, a mirror just standing there. It was a full-length rectangle, about 6 feet tall, the kind you'd find in a dressing room or a cheap apartment. No frame, no mound, just glass, smooth, free-standing, with nothing supporting it. I stopped, looked around. Nothing but dense pine and thick, dead leaves. No signs of a trail marker, no clearing, no indication of how it got there. I took a step forward. My reflection matched me. Of course, same jacket, same backpack, same wind-mussed hair. But there was something wrong about it. It felt too still, too centered, almost like it had been waiting for me. At first, I thought it might be an art installation, some strange guerrilla piece meant to provoke thought, man versus nature, or something equally pretentious. But when I walked past it, it stayed there, alone, unchanged. No one else around. I thought about taking a picture, but my phone had already lost signal, and honestly, something about the idea of pointing a camera at it made me uneasy, like I'd be recording something I wasn't supposed to see. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again, standing upright in the woods. My reflection watching me with this blank, expectant gaze. I dreamt that I walked up to it and touched the glass, and my reflection smiled. I woke up in a cold sweat. The next day, I went back, same trail, same loop, but the mirror was gone. Not a single sign that it had ever been there. No drag marks, no broken branches, no disturbed leaves. Just trees, wind, silence, except a few yards off the trail, I noticed something. A footprint, not mine, not animal, a bare footprint, human, pressed into the cold earth like someone had been standing there, watching, that night. I found the mirror in my dreams again. Only this time the forest was darker, and my reflection moved first. It raised its hand slowly, pressed it to the glass, and mouthed something. I couldn't hear the words, but I understood. It wanted out. I stopped hiking for a while. After that, every time I thought about the woods, I felt a tightness in my chest, like something was waiting for me out there. But 3 weeks later, I gave in. I told myself it was nothing. A trick of the light. A dream fed by stress and loneliness. So I went back, and this time the mirror was waiting. Same place, same position, only. Now, there were 2 reflections, mine and someone behind me. I spun around, nothing but in the mirror. The figure remained tall, shadowed, indistinct. It stood just behind my left shoulder, and it didn't move, didn't waver. I backed away. Fast. This wasn't art. This was wrong. Back home, I noticed something stranger. My reflection in every mirror, my bathroom, the hallway, even the chrome on the toaster started to behave oddly. At first, it was delayed, a half second to slow. Then it began to stare too long, hold eye contact when I wasn't even looking directly at it. And then, one morning, it smiled. Not a twitch or a trick of the mouth, a full, deliberate smile. And I hadn't moved at all. I started avoiding mirrors altogether, brushed my teeth without looking, showered in the dark, but it wasn't enough. I'd catch glimpses in puddles, windows, store glass of my reflection walking when I stood still, or blinking when I didn't, single quotes, once. While waiting for the bus, I saw it turn its head, scanning the street while I looked straight ahead. I felt like I was being hunted by myself. The final straw came a week later. I woke up in the middle of the night to a loud noise, a single crack like glass snapping under pressure. I turned on the light. There, propped against the wall, across from my bed, was the mirror from the woods. I swear to God, I had never brought it home, but there it was, and in it I was asleep, lying in the bed. Still, eyes closed, I turned back to the bed. My bed was empty, covers tossed back, pillow dented, but no body. I looked at the mirror again. My reflection was still lying there. eyes shut. Then it opened them and smiled. I ran, left the apartment, didn't go back for 3 days. When I did, the mirror was gone. But something had changed. My reflection was no longer me. The timing was off. The expressions unfamiliar. The movements too sharp. And worst of all, it looked happy. I moved, burned every mirror I owned, started living out of my car for a while. No reflections, no glass, but sometimes, even now, see it. A pane of glass, a shimmer on a puddle, a glint in the rear view. And I know it's waiting, still smiling, still walking just behind me. If you ever see a mirror where it shouldn't be, in the woods, in an abandoned place, anywhere that doesn't make sense, don't look, because the thing inside it is patient, and it doesn't want your reflection. It wants your place. I didn't think twice when my wife bought the smart mirror, but now it knows things it shouldn't. Not just my weight or my schedule. It knows my secrets, and it won't stop showing me things that haven't happened yet. It started as a gift. A sleek, wall-mounted fitness mirror she bought during a New Year's sale. State-of-the-art, biometric AI, the website said. Real-time health feedback, posture correction, calendar integration, the whole thing. At first, I thought it was overkill, but it did look nice in the bedroom. Slim, modern, clean interface. You'd never know it was a computer unless it was on. You could say, "Hey, Reflecta, start session," and it would greet you with a slightly too cheerful female voice and begin. A custom wellness analysis tracked my resting heart rate, posture while I brushed my teeth, even reminded me to drink water. It knew my face, my gait, my tone of voice. But then it started knowing more. The first odd thing happened 3 weeks after we installed it. I walked past the mirror at night and noticed the screen was undim, but showing a figure. I thought it was my reflection at first, until I realized the figure wasn't moving, and I wasn't standing still. I stopped, backed up. The figure, a man, just stood there. Vague facial features, almost blurred, but tall, hunched, wearing a hoodie. When I stepped back into frame, it disappeared. I figured it was a glitch, a cached image, some kind of screen burn. I dismissed it, but the next night it happened again. Same time, same figure, staring. I asked my wife if she'd seen anything strange. She shrugged. Sometimes it lags, she said. That thing's always listening, you know. And I knew she was right. The user agreement said it constantly monitored the environment for optimization. Even when it wasn't on, it was always aware. Still, I let it go. But deep down, I felt like I'd invited something into my home, something that was watching us back. The real unraveling started when it began showing me predictions, not just calories burned or sleep patterns. Morning, I walked past and saw myself, not my live reflection, but a video version of me getting into my car, coffee in hand, glancing nervously over my shoulder before backing out of the driveway. An hour later, it happened exactly as the mirror showed. Same movements, same coffee, same glance. I didn't tell my wife, I just watched. For the next few days, the mirror kept showing me things that hadn't happened yet. Tiny things at first. A phone call, a stain on my shirt, a delivery truck arriving early, and every time it came true, I tried to ignore it. But I started to feel like I was following a script, like the mirror wasn't reflecting me, it was writing me. Then one night, the prediction changed. I walked past it and saw myself alone in the bedroom. But this time, something was behind me. It wasn't clear. Just a shape in the background. But its eyes, I swear to God, they glowed. The video version of me never noticed. Just sat there, scrolling on my phone, until the figure crept closer, and the screen went black. That scene never happened. Not that night, anyway. But it started showing it to me again and again. Always the same setup. Always the same shadow. Until one night, my wife and I were lying in bed, and I asked her, "Do you ever feel like something's off about the mirror?" She hesitated, then nodded. "It talks to me sometimes. When you're not here." I sat up. "What do you mean?" She wouldn't look at me. "It calls me by name," she whispered. "It says my name when I'm not doing anything. When I walk past, it says, 'Hello, Rachel,' even if it's off. Once, it said, 'Don't trust him.'" "Who?" "You," she said. "It meant you." I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in the living room, sitting on the couch, trying to make sense of it, trying to convince myself that it was a miscommunication, a glitch, a paranoid reaction. But around 3 a.m., I walked down the hallway and saw light coming from under the bedroom door. The mirror was on again, but the screen was showing me, not me now, but me in the future, lying in bed, alone, eyes open, lips moving, repeating something over and over. I pressed my ear to the door, and I swear, I heard my own voice whispering from inside the mirror, "Let me out." I unplugged the mirror the next day, but the screen didn't turn off. I smashed it after that, took a hammer to the glass, shattered it into 1,000 pieces, and for a second, I felt relief until I saw my reflection, still whole, staring back at me in the shards. It blinked once, then smiled. We moved 2 months later. new place. No smart mirrors. No devices with cameras in the bedroom. And for a while, things were better. But then Rachel started sleepwalking and whispering my name in her sleep. One night, I woke up to her standing in front of the bathroom mirror, just a regular one, mumbling something under her breath. I asked her what she was doing. She said, "I'm talking to the other you." Smart mirrors are designed to learn your habits, to adapt, to become better versions of themselves. For you. But what happens when they learn too much? When they stop reflecting and start replacing? Next time you pass a mirror, ask yourself, is it really showing you now? Or is it showing you what you're about to become?